Hey, what's up everyone? Morty Croson here, and today we're going to be talking about the wrist position and how that makes a big difference in terms of throwing velocity, throwing power, and overall throwing distance. I'm going to start the video right now. So I was going through some, YouTube videos, Instagram videos, and really seeing a lot of quarterbacks that are completely screwing themselves in terms of throwing distance or velocity or even any type of exposure because of how they're holding the football and therefore how the ball ends up leaving their hands. It really makes a big difference when the ball just flies out of your hands a certain way. Everybody that I see that has college interest is able to get their wrists in the right position as they are releasing the ball, or get at least some degree of a understanding of what that looks like. So what you want to do with the football when you're holding the football is you can't have that thumb too high. The higher the thumb, the more there's going to be like a straight connection within the hand and the football. You want to have a gap there, okay? So you don't want to be stuck without a gap in your hand. So I think, as you get your index finger a little higher, it helps you in getting that thumb down. And you should feel like your wrist is strong. You should feel like there's not a lot of laxity in that part of your body, right? Because what happens, and really to me, you can see how I hold the football, like I try to get as much length as I can, right? Like I'm trying to really open up, because now I can control like how my pinky comes through, right? Because the two issues that we see, we talked about this before, is like the pinky doesn't come through all the way, right? So you're too far over here, and the biggest one is just not getting this action, right? We need to get this action as we're coming down and through, right? So it's downwards, right? We're coming down and through, right? And then there's also going to be obviously a rotational component as we're loading, but we need to be able to get that downward flick on the football in order to really have that great velocity. And being able to understand the timing for how that works within your body, within your motion, is what ends up being critical. When you start to be able to really break this down and dissect it, you can see who's going to be able to throw the ball really well and who's not, based off of where they are within the wrist. Right? And you got to be neutral, right? We can't be over to the side. So when you're holding it, you should almost grab it as if it's like a claw, right? Like I'm grabbing, I don't let the ball kind of sit back onto my hands, right? Because I see so many guys that are like throwing like this. That's just not going to be something that's going to work for 50 yards, 60 yards. Okay, it might work at 20, 25, and it might look pretty or whatever, but it's not going to be beneficial when it comes to really adding that elite velocity and really even creating the correct amount of external rotation within the arm, right? Because we want to be able to get good external rotation, get that elbow to be able to come back, right? When you're going here, when you let the wrist here, it makes it harder to be able to actually get pure external rotation. The better position you're in with the wrist, the more effective you're going to be at external rotation, and therefore the more velocity you're going to be able to generate within the arm, right? You have to be able to, we've seen direct correlation between external rotation in the shoulder and then internal rotation velocity in the shoulder in terms of ball velocity, okay? Again, external rotation, like the stretch of the shoulder, boom. Internal rotation velocity, how fast can we get, from that max stretch into internal rotation, as a direct correlation to ball velocity, ball distance. Okay, so we got to be able to slow it down here, right? It's not as important of, being able to throw the ball off your back foot, being able to do a bunch of scrambling drills, blah, blah, blah. When you get to the camps, when you get to the situation, you got to be able to adapt anyway, right? Just like when in a football game as playing an actual quarterback. And so, the bigger thing you got to be able to do is you got to wow people with how the ball's coming out of your hand. And in order to do that, you got to be able to work on that wrist flick, because it's important. You got to be able to constantly work at it. And, because when you throw the deeper footballs, right, you got to still be able to do that. The trajectory of the position changes a little bit, right, because of how we lift our front arm, but that doesn't mean that we still need to come down. If anything, it's more important to come down through that pinky as we're coming through the football. So, you have a few months left here before the season. Okay, and I know there's a lot of quarterbacks that are still struggling with distance. I know there's a lot of quarterbacks that are still struggling with velocity. You're not getting the same opportunities because they don't have the distance and the velocity within the throw. And so, you got to make a change. You got to make a commitment. You got to decide that this is something that you want to be able to do. Right? You got to be able to decide that you want to be able to improve your throwing velocity and your throwing distance and really commit to the mechanics behind it. Because really, it's the mechanics that's going to get you there. When it comes to sprinting, when it comes to throwing, when it comes to jumping, you got to be able to build your body up to be able to have the right mechanics. When you can do that, then you're going to be able to throw the ball further. right? Or throw the ball with more velocity. But if you don't have the right mechanics, right? Same with pitching, right? Then you're not going to be able to throw the ball far, and you're going to put yourself more at risk for injury, right? So if you're already throwing the ball far and you're like, oh yeah, I don't really need throwing power, throwing velocity, but your arms get sore, right? Or you're not consistently accurate, that's still a way to tell yourself that I don't have the cleanest mechanics. I could probably work on my mechanics, right? Because a lot of guys just have, big size, and that's why they're able to put a lot on the ball, but they're not accurate, right? Their wrist is all over the place. They're inconsistent. They don't know what they should be doing with the wrist because they've never been taught what they should be doing with the wrist, okay? And because of that, you don't end up being that elite level quarterback. The best, most effective way for somebody all over the world is just send over video. You don't need to travel, but we already have the program set up.